So when we talk about coping skills, can we look at the three periods of development? Early childhood, so all the way up to age 5, 6, middle childhood, and then teen years, 13 and above. What do you see as the typical, maybe let's go with the maladaptive coping skills because those might draw parents' attention. What are the typical maladaptive coping skills you see in these three groups of children?
So for the little ones, I see a lot more like physical acting out. So a lot of I've seen hitting, kicking, throwing, biting. Those are the sorts of things like they physically are trying to get their emotions out of their body, and sometimes it's not always safe, and it doesn't feel great, and it's not something that feels like it's hard to deal with when you have a kid who's really having a hard time and showing you in a very physical way that they are really upset about something. And we have to understand, especially when they're very little 2 and 3 year olds, their brains are still developing. That's such a huge time for brain development where it's very hard to self-regulate. They don't know how to yet. They're too little. And so to be able to help them work through and start introducing that feelings language at even that little, they can understand sad, mad, happy. They can get those like three basic emotions when they're that little, and you can start to build on those emotions. So yeah, when they're little, I see a lot more like physicality, probably because they don't have as much language. When I think of middle childhood, there can be some yelling that can happen, some refusing to do things, ignoring. So, they don't want to do something. They will just like stamp their foot and say like, no, I'm not doing it. I refuse. And maybe they're scared. Maybe they're worried. Maybe they're anxious. School refusal is something that I see a lot at that age. And especially like now coming back into going to school, at least in the United States and where I live, there's been a little bit of like hesitation to go back into school, some school anxiety, school refusal, and that, from like that middle childhood and even into teenage years. Now, teenagers, they're an interesting sort of creature as well. So just like
I can imagine, yes.
just like your brain develops at 2 points in your life the most. It's when they're like toddlers and when you're a teenager.
Exactly.
And it is really hard. So you have to actually kind of think about toddlers and teenagers kind of like their brains are developing the most that they'll ever grow in their lives. And to allow for understanding that, like there's the fits and starts, like when kids are in that middle childhood development, it's pretty smooth. Like they learn, they grow, and it's pretty smooth. Toddlerhood and teenage years, it's fits and starts. Like like they wake up and they learn new words when they're little, or they wake up and suddenly, like as a teenager, they're like, I can do this. I can solve this problem on my own. I can
Right. Mm-hmm.
myself. And then other times you're like, what's happening? What happened to my rational teenager? That's normal development. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the things I see are, they're trying to push away. They seem like they're trying to push away, I should clarify. But what they really want is to be able to have a home base, somebody to talk to, somebody to really help and understand them and listen and support them. But there is a lot of that go away, pushing away with the teenagers. But know that that's actually not what they want. They say
that's interesting that you say that though, because the teenage years is a time where they want to spend more time with their friends, and it's not cool spending time with your parents and your siblings. So some parents just allow them to go and don't bother them too much. But you're saying it's not necessarily that they want that. It appears innately as a developmental drive. There's a need for independence, but they still want to be attached to us as parents in some way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the thing is that time of life where friends become just as important as family. All before, family has been sort of like the home base and where you go, and that's who you spend time with, and that's how you, like, those are the people that you're around all the time. Suddenly friendship becomes more vital. And it takes sort of like you have two sort of things that are important to you in your life, and you need to figure out how to balance them. And as parents, we need to figure out what that balance is too. It's tricky for us because we've had them for so long, and it's been us with them, and then sort of like now we have to share them with their friends, but like knowing that they can always come back home.
Yes.
Creating a home that they know they feel safe, they feel listened to. And I know that teenagers are like, they buck at the rules sometimes. They don't want to follow them. They want to bend and break the rules and see what they
and that's part of their development. It's annoying for us parents, but it's also part of their development. Yeah.
Right. And they want to know that you are going to keep them safe. And there are going to be arguments, and there are going to be times when they are having complete sort of toddler meltdowns. But know that there's still a love there. There is still a love and a connection. And that's still what they still want to hang out and sometimes watch a TV show with you, or bake with you, or do things with you. Mm-hmm. So don't give up on them. They may be a little bit unlovable at times, but they also, you can have, when they get to be teenagers, you can have amazing conversations. That's what I love. I actually really love teenagers. They have like so much to say, and they just want to be heard. They just want you to listen.
So in addition to the appearing to pull away, what is another very typical way of teenagers coping when they're stressed?
So sometimes what they'll do, they can get very argumentative. And sometimes I get a little bit worried about my teenagers because I don't want them to choose unhealthy ways of dealing with being overwhelmed. I don't want them to choose alcohol. I don't want them to choose vaping. I don't want them to choose unsafe behaviors as a way to sort of manage when they are feeling stressed and overwhelmed. So that's why part of why I do what I do is to help them realize, like, yes, it could, maybe that is something that could help you feel better, but it is a temporary feeling and it doesn't change the problem. We still need to change the problem if you want to feel better. That's a temporary solution to maybe a much bigger problem. So let's dig down deep and figure out what's going on so you can choose healthier ways. I don't want you to fall into a social media hole. And I don't want you to just spend hours on Instagram and Snapchat. I want you to have a healthy balance when it comes to social media. I want you to be able to share your emotions, tell me what's going on, problem solve effectively, and be able to talk and figure out how to manage your stress in different ways, looking at your schedule, talking to your teachers, that kind of thing, as opposed to just feeling overwhelmed, feeling stressed, not telling anybody, and just trying to soothe yourself with substances.